In this video, we're going to discuss some information that is out there now which strongly suggests the 2023 cost of living adjustment is going to be huge. Before we begin though, I want to acknowledge my daughter who gave me this tie over the holidays. My request to her was that it looks good on film, and I have to tell you, so far so good. All right, let's get into it.
Holy Schmidt!
When the 2022 cost of living adjustment came out at the end of 2021, a lot of people cheered. They weren't expecting it. In fact, I ran a survey right here on YouTube a week or two before the COLA announcement came out and asked the participants what they thought it was going to be. Over 75% of them said it was going to be less than 5%. And a full 27% thought it was going to be between 0 and 2%. That was the largest category. So when it came in, many people cheered. But after the cheering was over, there was a stark realization of what a 5.9% cost of living adjustment means. That means the cost to live has gone up 5.9% in the year. All of the expenses, not just those that are paid for with someone's Social Security payment. And despite the big headline number, most people would prefer to keep their costs down rather than have a big increase in a portion of their overall retirement cash flow. By the way, the last time Social Security recipients saw a number that big was in 1982. That year, they received 7.4%. So it's been about 40 years since anyone has seen a number this large. Now, the thing about inflation is that when it hits, it's usually the result of a hot market. People have money and they're not afraid to spend it. They're feeling confident about things. In the previous inflationary economy, manufacturing companies and services companies were cranking out products and services to satisfy an unquenchable demand from the consumer. Products were racing through the system at a much faster rate, and everything from country club memberships to luxury goods were in high demand. People feel richer because their house price goes up, and oftentimes they're taking out things like home equity loans or refinancing and taking cash out, basically using their house as an ATM. Wage inflation is going up and people are making a lot more money. These are the classic drivers of the demand side of the equation. Don't get me wrong, it almost always turns ugly later, but in the beginning stages, people feel great about what's going on. Today's inflation is not that kind of inflation. Today's inflation is caused by what the Wall Street Journal and others call the Great Resignation. This combined with pent-up demand because people have been working from home for the better part of 2 years and have a lot of cash, together is driving a very different type of inflationary environment. This type of inflation means that something as basic as a microchip can shut down the production of an automobile line and drive up the price of a car to thousands of dollars over sticker price. There are a lot of these signals, but what signal do we have that suggests that the cost of living adjustment in October of this year is going to be huge? First and most important is what's happening with CPI-W. This is the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners. And this index represents a basket of goods that most people in this country would consider pretty typical for what they buy. And to be super clear, your cost of living adjustment is based entirely on the movement in CPI-W. There are no other inputs. So what's happening now with CPI-W that's going to make the 2023 COLA adjustment big? As I mentioned before, the Wall Street Journal calls it the Great Resignation. People are burnt out and they're quitting their jobs for no other reason than they just don't want to work anymore. This means that there are less workers in this country to make things. Less workers means that there are supply issues. When you hear about supply chain issues, this is the big driver. Companies have to pay more to replace them, which means that the input costs are going up. Then there's the other end. People have been working at home for the last 2 years and not spending money on things like train tickets or parking or fuel for their automobile. People are building cash and have big reserves, and they're not afraid to spend it. At the first sign of relief, people are going on vacation. They're using their funds to get back into the world and try to normalize their life a bit. Many of you know that I went down to Florida over the holidays, and you would think getting a hotel room would be relatively easy. In fact, it was quite difficult. Over the last few years, my family and I have experienced only driving vacations, someplace that you could drive the car to. We would not get on an airplane. This time it was different. We got on an airplane, we flew down to Florida, we stayed at a nice hotel. It's one that I had stayed in the past, so I knew it was a nice hotel. But this year, the restaurants were understaffed. The hotel was understaffed. Everything was significantly more expensive. I saw firsthand that the hotel was experiencing the Great Resignation. The same thing is happening everywhere, from cars to colleges to books to dinners out, limited supply and increased demand. At this point, you've got to be thinking, that's interesting, Jeff, but what does this have to do with the 2023 cost of living adjustment? Basically everything. In 2023, it's unlikely that people will quit quitting, that they will stop experiencing burnout, that they will stop building cash and want to use that cash to maximize their own personal enjoyment. Perhaps work and spending will look like they did in prior years at the beginning of 2023, but we're not there yet. So inflation for Q4 2021, and so far October and November have been reported with CPI-W, may very well be an indication of what the full year 2023 cost of living adjustment will look like. Now, there are a lot of numbers behind me, and if you're looking at those numbers and you're confused, don't worry. I'm going to explain exactly what's going on here, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity to download a free spreadsheet which will explain it again on my website, completely free, my gift to you. But let's jump into what's happening with CPI-W, and I'm going to explain it in very simple math. It's the Q3 CPI-W average for 2021 divided by the Q3 CPI-W average for 2020 minus 1. In this case, the average was 268.42 for 2021 and 253.41 for 2020. You divide the numerator by the denominator minus 1 and you come up with 5.9%. Why they didn't just take the December 2021 number and divide it by the December 2020 number is a bit of a mystery. I suspect it has something to do with allowing people to get ready for the adjustment coming, both within the government and the recipients. The important thing to note, though, is that this year's numerator will be next year's denominator. It always works that way. And don't worry about the meaning of the number 268.42. To be frank, if you asked 1,000 people, 999 of them would have no idea. Maybe even 1,000 would have no idea. It's just the change in the number that's important. By the way, if you're like me and you really want to get into the detail on this, go to my website, holyschmidt.com/COLA. As I mentioned before, that spreadsheet has the data back to 1984. So the big question is, what do we do with this information? We don't have 2022's Q3 average, so how can we determine what 2023 is going to look like? Given everything that's going on in the world, we can make some rough assumptions. First of all, what does CPI-W look like in November of 2021? That's the last time it was reported, at least as I'm recording this. That was the last time it was reported. The December number will be out in a few weeks. The November number was 273.042. So if we take Q4, November represents the second month of Q4. You take 273 and divide it by 268.42. Remember, this year's numerator is next year's denominator. You take those two numbers and you subtract 1, you come up with 1.72%. That represents 2 months. 1.72% times 6 gives you 10.32%. That is how you get to a full year number of 10.32%. Now, the issues we're facing aren't going to fix themselves over the next few months. Whether we get to 10.32% or not, it's hard to say. I hope we don't, frankly, because that means that other things are going on that are very, very bad. Now, what's happening now isn't driven by a raging economy and people feeling good about their place in life. This means that to control what's going on, the traditional tools of raising interest rates could be less effective. This also means that the government's ability to curtail what's going on isn't straightforward. And frankly, that the ability to control what's going on is less predictable. Whether we get to 10+% or not, who knows? But my prediction, for what it's worth, is that the 2023 cost of living adjustment will be higher than the 2022 cost of living adjustment. If you like this video, please make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get alerted the next time I post a video. I post 2 to 3 times a week. Also, check out this video I recorded on 10 tips to inflation-proof your retirement. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.